all of the 5-star reads. 2 books in a series that were 5 stars for me. Hello and welcome to another bookish video from me, Johanna, me and my dog and books. Today we've got 5-star reads. All of the 5-star reads that I have read in 2025 so far. And when I was going through my story graph, checking, because I've made notes, checking for them, there's been loads of 4 stars, but actually not as many 5 stars as I'd hoped, which I'm a bit gutted about. So my request to you is hit me in the comments with any 5-star reads you've had this year, because I need more. I need more. And saying that doesn't mean this is going to be a 1 book video. There is like, let me check, half a dozen? Yeah. So I'm going to give you my 5-star reads and what I'm currently reading. And similarly, you do the same in the comments. I want to know what your 5 stars are, what you're currently reading. And so I can always add more to my TBR, as I always like to. But let's get started with 2 books in a series that were 5 stars for me. So middle grade is punching above. This year it's the Pages & Co books 1 and 2. Pages & Co book 1 is Tilly and the Book Wanderers by Anna James, and book 2 is Tilly and the Lost Fairytales. These are amazing middle grade books about books. So it followed, so I'll not really give you two, I'll give you a bit of a synopsis, Pages & Co book 2, but like no spoilers. But in the first one, we follow Tilly, who lives with her grandparents because her mother is kind of missing. We're not really sure. You do find out in the book. But what we discover, or Tilly discovers, is that, firstly, she doesn't discover this because it's just fact. She lives with her gran and granddad in a bookshop called Pages & Co. So she lives in a bookshop, which is amazing. But she finds out she has this kind of magical skill, which is to be able to wander within books. And this comes about when she realises that it's like 1 or 2 characters, some of her favourite, Alice in Wonderland, Anne with an E, suddenly appear in her own world out of a book, and she gets really confused. And then she starts to like figure out with her friend that she's able to wander within a book. And then she asks her grandparents about it. They tell her a bit more information about how this is the case. And in the same time, she decides to go and try and find her mother. So that's all I'm going to say, other than it's an utterly delightful book. There's actually some really nice, I'm not finding it when I'm looking, but there's some really nice illustrations. That's a bad guy, by the way. What's his... Enoch? Can't remember. Anyway, it's a beautiful book about books and wandering within books while solving a mystery, whilst being filled with magic. And it was just, oh, do you know, it just an absolute book lover's delight in my opinion. And then in book 2, so I think there's only 6 in the entire series. I've read up to 4, I've got them all, so I'm working my way through them again. In book 2, it's Tilly and the Lost Fairytales. So by now we know that Tilly can wander within books and talk to characters she meets in the books. But her kind of magical book wandering powers are put to the test when it appears that some characters from fairy tales are leaking out of the books and causing havoc. So her and her friend Oscar decide to book wander into some of these fairy tales to try and like stop the chaos, which is there's characters lost within different books and plots getting all mixed up. And so some of the books are getting like quite a few plot holes in them. So she's there to try and solve the case. Honestly, these are just utterly delightful, bookish, middle grade, magical books that I highly recommend. Plus, they look stunning. So those were 2 5 stars. I can't remember what I thought of book 3 because I couldn't remember what I thought of book 2, but that was still definitely a 5 star. Then there's one that I haven't got a hold of because I got it from the library. And that is Fundamentally, which is shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction by Younis, Nussaibah. This is a thought-provoking exploration of faith, identity, belonging, all through the lens of the kind of main character and another character, but the main character, is it Sarah? I can't remember their name. She's a British Palestinian Muslim who has recently broken up with her girlfriend and takes on a job at the UN working with ISIS brides to de-radicalise them. Oh no, it's Sarah that she meets. It's an ISIS bride, I think, who's an East Londoner, and they strike up quite a complicated, unusual friendship or working relationship, kinda. This is the author's first fiction book. She's written non-fiction before, and it's loosely a memoir, and that it's based on a lot of stuff that she's worked in or done before, but it's still very much fictional. It covers a lot of cultural commentary, political insight, and it kind of reflects on what it means to have multiple identities in a world that kind of often demands simplicity. And you have a whole mix of gender identity, sexual identity, stereotypes, Muslim, British Palestinian identity, Iraqi identity, as well as those who work for the UN, which it is exposed in this story as being filmed with bureaucracy and corruption. It is so good. And despite the topic it's talking about, it is really satirical. Like, I found it particularly funny. So I highly recommend it. I kind of hope it wins the Women's Prize for Fiction, because I think it deservedly does deserve it. I think it deserves to win is what I'm trying to say. So that only came out, I think only came out it started this year, end of last year, can't remember. So highly recommend that, and it was without a doubt 5 stars for me. Then this month I got a 5 star, and you may have seen me speak about this in one of my weekend reading vlogs, and it will be in my wrap up, but it is Senseless by Ronald Malfi. Can we firstly just adore the beautiful spreadsheets of this book? It's stunning. And this is my first Ronald Malfi. I actually have 2 others. Let me just get them. Which have now just shot up my TBR list because this was phenomenal. I've got Ghostwritten, which is 4 novellas within it, and it says books can be deadly. Also, can we look at that cover? Terrifying. I think this is horror. This is very much dark thriller, and this one is 5 novellas, and it's called They Lurk. And I think this is, yes, this one's also horror. So I better read these ones soon because not horror, but very dark thriller is Senseless, which is his latest book. And in this story, we have 3 very, what appear to be different plot lines. We have a detective who is called to the scene of a woman's mutilated body in the hills of like sunny sort of desert-esque California, which is reminiscent of a case nearly a year ago, which he was involved in. And so you have that, which is a very dark case. Then we have a kind of character who's a bit of a loner drifter, lives with his mum, kind of becomes obsessed with this woman who he thinks is a vampire. That's all I'm going to say. Is she or is she just into dark? And then the third plot line is about a main character. What's her name? Maureen. And she's newly engaged to Hollywood producer Greg, who has this estranged son that kind of comes back on the scene, who Maureen is very concerned about and think might be into really dark and or involved somehow in one of these plot lines. Unconfirmed. This is so well written. It's pretty dark. Like, I would say if you're a fan of thriller writers like Karin Slaughter, Chris Carter, Sam Holland, then this is for you. It took loads of twists that I didn't see coming. It was very tense and I adored it. And this is kind of like the heat and the tenseness of what feels like LA, Hollywood, California. And honestly, I thought it was brilliant. And each of the three kind of parts of the story, sorry, it's set in Los Angeles, which isn't, sorry, California, anyway, it says, what do you see? Which is a story about the mutilated woman's body. What do you hear? Which is about Maureen and her fiancé and his unhinged son. And then what do you feel? Which is about Toby, who's like a very unhinged young man, drifter, who obsesses over a particular woman. And so that's how they're split into the senses almost. I don't want to say anything more. It was an utter page turner and I couldn't put it down. And I would love to see this adapted into a movie. I think it would be amazing. So that was this month's 5-star. I still got June to December to try and get more 5-stars into my reading year. Then talking of Karin Slaughter, one of her books, it's an oldie I think, let me check, 2015, it's about 10 years old. It's not that old, is it really? This has been on my shelf for ages and I was desperate to pick it up because I've only ever heard good things about this thriller. A dark thriller. If you've ever read Karin Slaughter, you know she's a dark thriller writer. If you haven't, she's a very dark thriller writer. It is quite graphic, so be warned. And in this one, we have a woman called Julia, who was the eldest sister of Claire. And 20 years ago, Julia went missing. And this was like a mystery that was never solved and pretty much tore the family apart. Now, today, another girl has gone missing with chilling echoes of Claire's missing sister, Julia. And so Claire is convinced they are linked. But when Claire starts to learn the truth about her sister, she is kind of confronted with a shocking revelation and pretty much nothing will ever be the same again. That's all I want you to know. Do not go checking out the reviews or Googling it because avoid spoilers. This is a chunky one, but in true like Karin Slaughter style, it is utterly gripping. There's so many, a mix of like red herrings and plot twists where I was like, oh my god, no, and where you think you've kind of figured out where it's going, it's ultimately incorrect, in my case anyway. It is pretty brutal. The level of plotting that Karin Slaughter must have done for this book is outstanding. Like how she connects the different characters and timelines. Top tier, top tier. This was terrifying, brutal and brilliant. and I highly recommend it. And if you've read this one by Karin Slaughter, tell me any others of Karin Slaughter that are of a similar ilk, because I adored this. The next is actually non-fiction. It's called Say Nothing, a true story of murder and memory in Northern Ireland by Radden Keefe. And he is the author who wrote the other he writes really like detailed, in a really good way, investigative, historical, this is historical fiction, but I would say not all of it is non-fiction. The last book he wrote, which was called Empire of Pain, which was about exposing the Sackler family, the very rich and influential family that are the cause and creators of the opioid epidemic, and has been the inspiration for like TV dramatizations like Dope Sick and etc. So he wrote Empire of Pain, which was also 5-star, phenomenal. This one is about the Troubles in Northern Ireland. Now, Radden Keefe writes this with no allegiance to either side, and actually no connection to Northern Ireland or any sort of particular opinion. He kind of goes into it as a investigative journalist with an interest in doing some historical investigation into it and documenting that. And it's an account of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, which he centres around the 1972 disappearance of Jean McConville, who is a mother of 10 kids from Belfast. It's, as I said, such an amazing piece of investigative journalism, and he cleverly delves into the personal and political costs and consequences of the conflict, secrecy, and everything that can lay in the shadow of the violence in Northern Ireland during that time. And actually, given that I was born in the late 70s, so I grew up in the 80s and very aware of Northern Ireland, the IRA, it being in the news, the bombings. I was probably aware of it, but as a kid, I didn't really understand how that all came about and what loyalists and unionists and the IRA were all about, and you kind of knew a little bit. But actually, weirdly, I don't even think I got taught any of that at school, which is wild. And so this was so insightful and it was a really gripping sort of narrative non-fiction, which is something, having read other of Radden Keefe's books, I was just like, he does such an amazing job of, like, not necessarily say being, pretty impartial through his research and the sharing of all the information. Like, say in the Empire of Pain, it was hard to be impartial when they kind of uncovers all the evidence clearly pointing to the Sackler family. But in this one, obviously, he interviews many people who were involved on both sides of the conflict, and it was utterly fascinating. This is then, you may have realised if you've maybe seen it, I think it's on Disney Plus, it's turned into a dramatisation called Say Nothing, which I've got saved to my favourites to watch, which I hear good things about, although there are two sisters in this story, and I can't remember their name at the moment, who were IRA members. I don't believe one of them's alive anymore, but one of them still is, and she threatened to sue Disney Plus and the production for the portrayal of her in said dramatisation. I don't think that went anywhere, but I have heard very good things about, although I have heard it's pretty brutal, as you can imagine, because it's about the Troubles in Northern Ireland. And you know what, like, I will pick up any other book that this author writes, because he has an amazing way of turning non-fiction, almost like, say, true crime in the loosest of senses, in a very detailed but utterly compelling way. How many times have I said utterly? I've said it a lot. Apologies if I have. So that there has been all, not that many, I want more, all my 5-star reads so far in 2025. So let me know, A, if you've read any of these, and B, what are yours, because I need more. Let me know in the comments. And now, before I finish up, I'll tell you what I'm currently reading. So I've got these two and one on my Kindle. First up, I'm reading Annie Bot by Sarah Greer. It's actually quite a small one, but I'm listening to it on BookBeat. And we follow Annie, who is a bot. Spoiler! She's been built and created as the perfect girlfriend for Doug. She attends to all his whims, both in the house and what she wears, and their intimacy. And then Annie starts to be like, what would it be like if you didn't really do what Doug says? And starts to consider life without Doug. So far, I'm enjoying it. I'm not loving it, and the only reason for that is, as a closed door PG-13 kind of reader, there is quite a lot of sex in this, which I'm not so keen on. Also, Doug and his friend, is it Ronald? I think it is. They're repulsive men. Like, swear to God, horrible, horrible men. Ugh. And so, yeah, I am enjoying it. I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. So obviously talks a lot, you know, it's raising questions about power, misogyny, identity and the likes. I'm kind of enjoying it. Then I picked up, in contrast, Like a Love Story by Abdi Nazemian, and this comes out 5th of June, and it is a Stonewall Honour book, and we follow 3 characters. We've got Reza, who's an Iranian boy, and he's just moved to New York City. He knows he's gay, but he's terrified someone will find out. All he knows of gay lives are the media's images of men dying of AIDS, because this is set in 1989 in New York City at the peak of the AIDS crisis, where, yeah, as you can imagine, the media were dealing with that in the way the media did at that time, which was to blame the gays and not really help find a cure. Then we've got Judy. So they're all at kind of high school. Yeah, they're all at high school. We've got Judy. She's an aspiring fashion designer. She worships her Uncle Stephen. He's a gay man who has AIDS and devotes his time to activism. Judy has never imagined finding romance, but she kind of falls for Reza, which we're like, oh, complicated, because then there's Judy's bestie, Art, who is out as gay. Despite that, he's got very conservative parents who, you know, are not exactly supporting him in his life. So he kind of rebels by going through life documenting both the activism and the kind of AIDS crisis in New York at this time. However, Reza and Art get close, and it'll get a wee bit, I think it's going to get a wee bit complex, because poor Judy, she really likes Reza. Anyway, I'm only 100 pages in and I'm really enjoying it. Can we also love this cover? It's got a wee bit of blurb here that says, a story of family, friendship and romance facing hate and indifference with love and strength. So sounds like the kind of book I need. And also I'm reading one of John Mars's latest thrillers. Yeah, I think it came out, when did it come out? It came out in March this year, and it's called You Killed Me First. And wow, for opening scenes, guys, this is a scene opener. It's November 5th. And in the UK, don't ask why, it's the most ridiculous thing. It's bonfire night and we have bonfires and Guy Fawkes, yada yada. Why we still celebrate, I have no idea. Anyway, it's bonfire night, it's November 5th. And a woman wakes up bound and gagged inside a freaking bonfire. And she is literally moments away from being engulfed by flames. That's how this book opens. It's not a spoiler. But then immediately it jumps 11 months previous, and we have 3 women in this story. We've got Margot, a fairy TV star and long-suffering friend of Anna, both of whom watch as a new neighbour comes in, a glamorous woman called Liv. And Liv has a flawless family, and they've just moved into the neighbourhood, of course. So this story revolves through the 3 different POVs of Margot, Anna and Liv. So the 3 of them kind of fabricate a total pretense of a friendship between the 3 of them. It all seems a really bit, I don't know, real housewivesies. But as you can imagine, each of them harbour a deadly secret. I don't know what it is yet because I'm only 20% in. And it's Liv, the newcomer to the neighbourhood, that senses that there's something terrible beneath the kind of polished facades of these women's lives. That's all I know, but at the moment I'm utterly gripped, and these 3 women seem to be very toxic to each other. I'm not liking Margot, I feel sorry for Anna, and jury's out on Liv. So those are the 3 books I'm currently reading. You let me know what you're reading in the comments. Let me know if you've read this one by John Marrs. Also, if you fancy this or this, and hopefully I'll at least finish 1 or 2 of them in a forthcoming weekend reading vlog. So for now, and until next time, happy reading. Thank you for watching, for liking and commenting. And if you don't already, please do subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you in another bookish video very, very soon. Cheerio!